Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the slight delay. We'll start with this webinar in a few minutes. Before we start, I'd just like to give you a small introduction about CI Tata Communications Center for Digital Transformation. So, ready or not, digital transformation is reinventing business as we know. Every enterprise now faces a choice between innovation or extinction. Digital transformation is not specifically about IT or technology. It's about redefining your entire business strategy, perhaps even changing the culture. To succeed in digital, companies should think of technology not just as a support function, but as strategic competence. Digital transformation is not just about applying technology to business. It's actually about creating entirely new business model on the backbone of technology. So this transformation is actually a business transformation, which requires business processes transformation, which is enabled by technology transformation. Now, in today's webinar, we'll be talking about one of the business process transformation, which is a very important business process, that is HR. But before we go into that, a little while ago, as per one of the studies conducted by us on Industry 4.0, the readiness of Indian enterprise for digital and Industry 4.0 was found lagging behind the required threshold for Industry 4.0. On an average, even the solution providers lag behind in terms of the threshold, although the gap is much lower for the solution providers. When we dig deeper into the reasons for the gap, we realized there were several barriers. There was a lack of clear digital operations vision and leadership support. Perhaps that stemmed out of unclear quantifiable economic benefits in digital investment. There is a major need for skilled workforce capable of supporting this digital shift. There are issues with data security and privacy, lack of digital standards, norms, and benchmarks. There's even scope for better technology collaboration amongst the solution providers. So it was realized that there was a need felt for a trusted platform wherein the industry could bank on for the right kind of solutions and handholding. And that is how the Center for Digital Transformation was conceived. With CI, the principal partners for this Center for Digital Transformation is Tata Communications, and associate partners is Dell Technologies. Now, the purpose of this center is to help Indian industry become globally competitive. This center balances on four basic pillars, which are the digital transformation services, cybersecurity, skill building, and the outreach program. Within the digital transformation services, we have taken a lead in a maturity model cum rating system, which we call DEXEL. I'll be talking about it a little in the next slide as well, which is a sort of assessment and advisory. Similarly, we are working on cybersecurity. Skill building is also one of the important aspects on which we have already started working, and outreach programs are also on. So back to DEXEL, which I was talking about, it was launched during the Digital Transformation Summits and Awards last year in December. And it was a huge success. The summit was a huge success. Now this DEXEL model, which I'm talking of, is a rating system which focuses on basic 5 dimensions. The first dimension is strategy, structure, and governance. Second is the business processes. Third is the technology. Fourth is the culture and talent. And the business results is the fifth and the very important dimension, which cuts across all the above 4 mentioned dimensions. We'll be talking about it in our later discussions when we have. However, this was just to brief you about what we have been doing here. About the skill building programs, we have been conducting various skill training and certification programs pan-India. Awareness workshops, seminar, conferences have been happening, and webinar, present webinar is also part of those series. We have this DX Awards and Summit, which was conducted last year. It was a huge success. We had good participation, both from the industry and all the stakeholders. We had also introduced a Digital Transformation Best Practices Awards, which again was very successful, and we received large participation from people across the sector. Now, before I hand you over to the presenter for the webinar, Mr. Rahul Datri, just give me a second before we just change over to him. So
Good afternoon,
Rahul
everyone.
is
Yeah. Sorry, please. Good afternoon,
Rahul
everyone.
is
Yeah. Sorry, please.
Rahul, just give me a second and talk about you before I hand you over officially. So Rahul is a seasoned business leader with blend of industry and consulting experience. He brings with him a strong functional and technical expertise, which he leverages to driving the business transformation using artificial intelligence, RPA, big data, and big data. He is a technological expert as well. He started his career as a business strategy consultant and worked extensively for clients based in US, Europe, and India. Having the passion for technology and data, he transitioned into big data, technology, and OD consulting, wherein he worked for government, semi-government, and private sectors across the industry verticals. In his current role at Tata Communication, he is driving HR digital transformation using artificial intelligence and cutting-edge technology. So we hope to learn a lot from you, Rahul. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Colonel and Kavita, for organizing this webinar and giving me a chance for sharing this experience. Let me know if I am audible and my slides are visible to you all. Kavita, is that
Yes,
okay? My slides are okay. Great.
See your slide and we can hear you loud and clear.
That's great. See, when we talk about HR, and I think in today's world, and I think my slides will talk about the different technology interventions which has come into HR, but I think HR is always being, and I think since beginning, it has always been the last one to adapt to the technologies, and it's always the front-end business side which basically adapt to the technologies. And somewhere the HR over the period of time was lagging behind, but now it is the time when the whole economic and socio-economic dimensions of the world is changing. The HR also need to adapt to these new technologies, and I think the HR people who are expert in the functional areas, they also need to have slightly technological bent so that they can start using technologies. And I think in my following slide, I will basically help you understand how the technology is helping the HR to become more effective and efficient and helping drive the business results. So I think that is what we are going to discuss. So I think my next slides talk about the future of work, which is not, it's basically the future of work, and these are some images which I pulled out from the future of work research which is going on across the different countries. And this is not something new. We all are aware of that, how basically the advanced technologies, especially the artificial intelligence, the robotic process, are basically becoming the integral part of the business now. So I think if we look at, because HR is supposed to manage the resources, if we look at from that point of view, we also have to start looking at managing these type of resources also. But if I simply look at how the basically over the period of time, which is since 2000, I think it is lately in 2008 or 9, the HR start adapting to the new technologies. And I think, but if you look at when we were adapting to the new technologies, what are the few challenges we start facing was, because for everything we picked up a different system. For example, recognition, different system. For attendance management, different systems. So we had multiple type of systems available with us in the office. So which means that data is getting stored in these independent systems. So that was also one of the challenge. Some of the processes has become redundant, standalone application, decentralized data storage, basically overly customized systems, fragmented employee database, offline consolidation of the report, which takes again 4 or 5 days to build those reports and then give it to the business leaders. By that time they receive the reports, or let's say the dashboards or the data, I'm sure their work must have been over, and then that reports are of no use for them. So how we make these things real time, how do we use the technologies? And technology doesn't mean that always you need to invest heavy cost. We are in a world where a lot of open source technologies are available, which doesn't require too much cost to be invested while you are making all these initiatives in your company. And I will be touching base on some of these. But if we get into some more details, and I'm sure a lot of you must be from the global organizations, and why only global if you look at India also. So what are the emerging workforce trends we are seeing? We are looking at digital disruption, which is happening. We are looking at digital workforce, because nowadays the people, they are on their mobile almost all the time. Now we all are working from home, and I'm sure most of us must be using our mobile for checking our email, for collaboration platforms and all those things, for WhatsApp. We are almost on WhatsApp. We basically watch on Netflix. We don't use cables or all these things. We basically shop on Amazon. So everything is digital around us. So we are a digital workforce. There is a new workforce which is coming in, which is baby boomers and the millennial workforce, which is getting in, and they have the mobiles in their hand 24/7. They access everything online and they work everything online. And when they get into the organizations, they expect the same thing. They expect the same thing from the organization. Whatever is whatever they're expected to do, that has to be easy to use, real time, handy. They can use this anytime, anywhere. And definitely a very interesting part is the user experience, because they are used to using Facebooks, Twitters, Amazons, and Netflix of the world. So they also expect the same type of experience. Second is basically globalization. Although most of the organizations are global, however, we still need to have the local touch into our approach. Because if you go to Europe is overall, we can call it as Europe, but when you go to Germany, it's very different from France, it's very different from Spain. So I think all these countries are different, and we need to basically follow their rules. And I think when you look at from the most important challenge which we generally face when we are in any of these countries or any of these regions is the GDPR. And that is also one of the biggest challenge of HR, how to manage the GDPR, because see, we are collecting data at different levels, but how do we ensure that the data, whatever we are collecting, is basically as per the GDPR rules of different countries if you are a global organization? So that is also one of the big challenge which we generally go through. The whole organization, because the kind of transition every organization is going through is basically most of the organizations are more flexible and agile because they are adapting to the changing scenario. So similarly, your HR processes and system need to be flexible and agile so that they can adjust to the changing scenarios of the organization. It cannot be rigid the way we have done. The role of managers have changed a lot, because earlier the HR was expected to do a lot of work, but now the managers are expected to manage their team, and we as a HR need to be playing the role of a consultative or let's say the consultants who is basically helping the managers to effectively play their role of a people manager. Data-driven decisions, because we are in the world where the data is getting generated at every step. So how can we collate all this data together and help the manager to show the data, so that instead of making the decisions based on the perceptions, we make the decisions based on the data. And the last thing is privacy of the employee information, which I talked about, the GDPR part of it. If you look at how basically the entire, if you look at the entire technology landscape has evolved over the period of time, I think if you look at first thing which most of the organization does is they used to work on the Excel sheets, and then I think most of the evolved organization, they move to HRIS system, which is HRIS, which could be SuccessFactors, which could be SAP, which could be your Oracle. So there are different type of HRIS system which is available in the market. But I think if you look at the earlier, we used to basically look at web services, where I think whenever we were using the Access, we were managing the data in the Access and then pulling out the data into Access, managing everything into the worksheets. Then slowly in 2014 and 10, the technology disruption happened, and the RPAs and the AI ML and the deep learning came into the play, where it was already being used in the business side, but now the HR also adapting that. And now you see there are a lot of mushroom companies which has come up, especially in the talent acquisition areas, where they are offering a lot of AI ML based screening and the talent acquisition processes, and we'll talk that about in the recent slide. But what is the future? Because the future is, I think in one of my slides I'll talk about, because we have been looking at analytics, we have been looking at data, we have been looking at reports, but there's a new world which is coming up, which is called augmented. Augmented is the word. I'm sure you must have seen augmented reality, where you basically sitting at this location. For example, I'm sitting in Gurgaon right now, and we are having a webinar, but as a part of the augmented reality, we could be in the one room and see each other, and then you can basically attend these webinars in a augmented way. So the augmented reality is there, and there's another thing which is called augmented analytics, which is again becoming very, very heavy in nowadays, and I think I will touch base on some part of it in my following presentation. So NLP, NLQ, so these are not the complex word. These are basically the natural language processing and natural language query. And I think we all use Echo, or let's say Alexa at our home, or let's say the Siri in our mobiles, or the digital assistants. These are nothing. They use these technology at the back end, which is the deep learning technologies, which is basically natural language processing and natural language query. So these are the technologies which is being used. So just give me a second, please. So I think now I will talk about and get slightly deep into the different areas of HR, and I'll be covering different areas like talent acquisition, talent management, compensation management, learning, HR operations, and last I will be covering the reporting and dashboard. So I call this as an intelligent automation, because there are two types of automation which we generally do. One is the automation where we simply put the HRIS system into place and the process become automated, where the forms get filled, then it goes to next level, and then the approval happens and all those things. So that is just the automation part of it. When you say intelligent, then you are giving the thinking capability, or then you are giving the intelligence to the automation which you are doing. And we'll talk about these things in the following slide. When you talk about the intelligence, there the artificial intelligence and machine learning plays a very, very critical role, because that is the technology which gives the intelligence to the automation which you are currently doing. Let me, before we get into any of the areas of HR, the major areas of HR, let me first share with you, this is what the landscape we use in Tata Communication. Is not that everything we are using. If you look at, we have success factors. We use HRIS as a success factors, which is our core HRIS system, where the automation has all. So we have done the automation of all our processes. However, there are few areas where we have used AI/ML to basically provide the intelligence to the automations which we have done. So and if you look at, we basically, the data get generated at every level into different systems, because we are also the same. So we also have the fragmented systems, we have multiple systems, but instead of basically changing all the systems, which is again very, very cost consuming and then time consuming, so we have basically created a data mart, which means all the data from different systems, we pull it into the data mart, and then from data mart we use it into the analytics engine and the reporting engine, and I'll talk about in the reporting part. But every data which is getting generated, because we need to get the data at one place, because otherwise you won't be able to use the big data analytics, or you will just be doing the simple reporting or simple analytics, which is based on your assumptions. For example, number of learning days per employee. So you just go, you have the defined matrix, so you find out the data and then you basically divide and then give that. So you'll be doing that, but you won't be able to understand what impact it has on if you combine it with other parameters which is there because you have never thought of it. So if you want to have that, then definitely all the data need to be at the one place. And I'll talk about the data also, how the data need to be basically created, generated, and what are the ways we can manage the quality of the data, because that becomes the base of it. Second piece is very, very important. And if you look at my presentation on the top, I have, there's a small EVA I have written because this is a project which is going on internally, because as I told you, we are managing the digital workforce and we are expecting, hello? Okay, so we are managing digital workforce and we are expecting millennials to be basically, and they are basically becoming, they are joining these organizations, and the numbers are increasing, and they are on the go, they are accessing their different things on their mobiles. So I think the experience need to be managed, because when we have different systems, every system has its own experience layer, which we call it as a UI, user interface layers. So we are basically pulling everything into under one umbrella, and we are creating the user experience with the help of some UX designers. We have created a user experience layer. So basically the users get in touch with this layer only, and the underlying system is definitely the underlying system which is powering this layer. But from the user's point of view, they are just interacting with this layer. So let me get into the next slide, which is, because currently now we are in the world where the focus needs to be more and more on the user, because we need to put the user in the center, because otherwise whatever system we design, we may design based on our assumptions or what we think the user may need. But I think that is the old way of designing the system, because if we design it in that way, then the users are not going to use it. You may force them to use it, because by forcefully they will be applying for leave, by forcefully they will be doing their performance evaluation and all those things on the system. But that is not something which can be used, because if they are not using it, then you are not generating the data. If you're not generating the data, then you cannot basically use that data or help the managers to start making the decisions based on data, because more and more people they use, and more smarter you can make your decision making process by generating more data around it. So earlier the focus was more on the UI. UI is the user interface which we design. I think you open up any website or portal, you see the layout, and that is basically the UI. But UX is the user experience. But this whole UI is based on the user experience. When you go to Netflix, it's so simple. Nobody teaches you how to use Netflix or how to use Amazon. You simply go and start using of your own. There is no teaching guide, or there is no guide. But I think in our corporate world, most of the time, whenever we launch the system, we first make the user manual and then we send it to the managers. Okay, you look at this user manual and start using it that way. And I think most of the time it becomes very cumbersome also for these managers. So I think the UX, the user experience, is most important in today's world. So we have to start thinking from that point of view. The second part is data, data, and data. Because if you want to have the intelligence into your system, if you want to basically make the impact on the business, you need to basically collect all the data which is getting generated, whether it's a structured data or is a unstructured data. The difference between the structured and the unstructured data is because it could be some English text which is being or let's say in the performance management, there's some comments from the manager. So every data need to be captured, because then only you will be able to evaluate. Because then only you will be able to evaluate the processes. So I think that the data is a most important part of the whole thing. Now, when we look at the data, because when the data is getting generated at multiple levels, I think the quality, am I audible right now? Hello?
Yes, Rahul, you are audible.
Okay, sorry. So I think the quality of the data is very, very important. So how do we make sure the quality of the data which we are basically collecting? So there are multiple ways, because currently also, so let's think it in a very, very layman language. When we get the data into our Excels from different sources, we put that into our Excels, and then we start using some Excel rules to check the data. So let's think of those rules, and these rules are nothing in a technical language. We call it as a DQMS, data quality management rules. So you can put these rules into your data mart, or let's say whatever data source you have created, so that the data can be checked there. And then you can use, so I'm talking about what we have done in Tata Communications. So I'm talking about from that experience. So all that data gets collected into my data mart. And in the data mart, I have defined the rules. Because see, we are using SuccessFactors, we have the position management also. So every employee is linked to one position in the organization. So there's a position attribute, there's a people or the person who is there on this position, there's attributes linked to it. So all the attributes need to be cross-checked. So we have put certain rules there which checks the quality of the data. And if there is any discrepancy, it automatically sends an email to the responsible team or whosoever is responsible for it, so that the team can basically quickly make the changes immediately. Because we have to put that, because see, it's always difficult to basically manage the or it's always difficult to manage the error-free data, because the errors will be there, because most of the time it's a human who is entering the data into the system. But I think with these rules, you can proactively inform, and basically the teams can start correcting that. And that also gives you, okay, these type of data, or let's say these type of errors which is coming more frequently, then you can go back and look at what is the main reason, and then you can look at if there is any solution which is available, so that we can fix and the frequency can be reduced drastically. So I think that also gives you, so you need to keep on analyzing the errors which you are getting every now and then. So again, the data is very, very important, because if you don't have data, forget about AI/ML, because AI/ML is nothing. The algorithms, which is definitely, you can get a lot of algorithm. If you go and search Google, you will get a lot of classification algorithms. There are a lot of platforms which is available, which is more drag and drop, where you can get it. But the most important part when you have the big data is data, because these algorithms need to be trained on the data. The more data you have, the better quality of data you have, the better predictions or the better output you will get from these algorithms. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult. So data is the core for any artificial intelligence model which you are working on. And there are multiple ways you can improve the quality, or let's say the volume of the data. So there are multiple technological ways. I will not get into those details, but I would suggest the first step should be where you start collecting the data at a single location, because that is the first thing which I did. I think when I got into this role, the first thing was basically to develop a data mart and to collect the data from all the disparate systems which we have across data. Now let's get into some of the specifics of the HR verticals, and let me first touch base on the talent acquisition piece. And if you look at the talent acquisition, because that is the that has an immediate impact on the business. When I say immediate impact, because see, everybody in the business is looking for, okay, if he or she has a open position, then they expect the positions to be filled very, very quickly. So how basically the technology helps this? As I told you, my core system is SuccessFactors. So my processes are anyways automated, which means raising of job requisition, then it goes to the talent acquisition team, and the talent acquisition team can start working on it. So that process is anyways automated. But the second part of it is, because now the problem comes when you start posting these jobs, then you get a lot of applicants from outside and internally. And you start matching up those with the job requisition, those resumes. Sometimes I think a lot of time is required to do that if the volume is high, or most of the time we use our human judgment to basically make those choices. Okay, this person suits or this person doesn't suit, and which may or may not be right. But there is a lot of screening algorithms which is available in the market, and these screening algorithms are nothing. These basically understand the job requisition, because while they are reading through the job requisition, they will also give you the opportunity to refine your search by adding some allied skills or some parallel skills and all those things, so that your match could be better. Because sometimes when we write the job descriptions or job requisition, we may not be able to write it in a more refined way. So I think these algorithms helps you to basically write down or add the additional layer to it, so that your search can become more sharper. And then when the resumes start coming, it start rating the resumes. It could be based on the percentage, it could be based on the numbers, it could be based on the star rating. So I think every algorithm has a different approach of it, but that is an outcome which you see. And then instead of sending 20 resumes to the managers to basically see through it and then basically tell us, okay, these are the 5 people I should be arranging interview with. So you can just send 4 or 5 resumes because you have already done the match, and then basically the manager's time is also saved, and the whole cycle, whole turnaround cycle will improve. That is one part of it, the screening part of it. Now, the second challenge is, because when we look at the resumes, most of the time the resume may not say anything and everything, everything about the candidate. So there are other technologies also which is available in the market, which basically pulls up the social profile along with the resume of the person. Social profile doesn't mean it will pull up the LinkedIn and all those, because sometimes it's difficult to get the information from some of the portals, especially LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't allow crawling or pulling the data directly unless you have the business account with them. So I think it pulls up the social profile, which could be easily available, like Facebook, like Twitter and all those. So you also trying to understand the social part of the candidate, because when you look at the social part of the candidate and look at the resume, it helps you to make the right decision, because social part also helps you to understand what is some of the behavioral element of the resources could be. And I think, I'm sure most of the organization, that depends upon the level they are hiring, they will have the psychometric or all these assessments which can help them to look at more fitment, but that will give you the overall this thing to understand the social and the resume part of it. So that is very, very important. The second challenge at the time of hiring, which most of the organization faces, is because every organization is putting a lot of focus on the diversity hiring. When I say diversity hiring, there has to be a right ratio of men and women in the organization. And I think when we started this project, we started with an assumption that people tend to basically have the biases, and they may be basically rejecting the resumes based on the gender bias they have within them. So we basically use the same algorithm and marks the resume. When I say marked, which means the gender related information were masked, which is name or any noun, pronoun which was referring to the gender was masked, and it was basically a neutral resume which was shared with the managers, and managers first shortlist, and after the shortlisting is being done, and then they basically get to see the name and the details of the person. And definitely we have seen there was a spike in the gender balance hiring in our organization. So that is also one way, if that is also one of the focuses of your organization, is where you can have that. The second part is, because now I think most of our organizations have our own career portals, and then basically we post the jobs on the career portals, and then we tend to see some people, they come and they post into all the available open roles. So I think just to help the people is something where we can use the same type of algorithms, where as soon as they basically upload their resumes, algorithm will understand the resume, it will match with the job, and it will say these are the 2 jobs where you are fitting 80% or 90%, and then you can apply specific to those jobs only, rather than applying to all the jobs and then losing all the possibilities of being hired. So I think that is where you can just focus on 2 jobs and you can do that. So I think that is a smart way of helping the candidates also to submit their resumes, and then it also helps you to manage the volume in a more smarter way, rather than one applying for all the open jobs and then you are seeing the same resume every time for every job. So that is also the second thing. So the another part is basically, which we have not implemented in Tata Communication, and that is something which we are currently working on. Because when we hire these people, I think when you extend them the offer, from offer till the joining, there's a lot of gap which is there. And I think most of the organization, irrespective of the size they are in, if you're not engaging with these new hires, then definitely there is a high probability they may or may not join, because we are in a competitive world. And if we are hiring some high-end talent, and then I'm sure he or she will have multiple offers in their hand. So how do we basically keep them engaged? And if you're working in a global organization, if you're doing a global hiring, then definitely the candidates must be across the globe, across the time zones, and they expect to connect with you often on different policies, different things. So I think that is where the digital assistance plays a very, very important role. When I say digital assistant, it is just like Siri, where you can go, you can type your queries, and you can get the responses. Again, in this type of thing, I will simply use the word, I will not use too many technical jargons, but we use the deep learning, which is more NLQ, NLP type of approach, where you train the bot on the different type of queries which you have been getting. Again, the data need to be collected over the years, and then you can basically train it. And then as soon as somebody asks the question, and then it can basically start responding. And I'm sure you and I have already experienced digital type of assistance everywhere. In nowadays in banking also, you go, whether you go to SDFC or whatever it is, so there is a bot implemented there, or everywhere we see these type of digital assistance. So it's a time for us to look for it, so that it start engaging with these candidates, sharing some information about the company, if they want to know something about the leave policies or different type of policies. So these are the things which can be basically fed into this, and the candidates can get the response immediately, rather than sending an email to the TA team, and then TA team, because they are also tied up with other hiring, so they may or may not get the time to respond back. But this will help them to engage in a much better way. The second challenge which we generally face if your organization is large and complex is when somebody says, okay, let's schedule an interview with me and him. So there are 3 people involved in the interview. So the poor TA guy need to basically look at the calendar or speak to these people, and then basically schedule the interview. And then he has to invest a lot of time, which he could have used in basically sourcing the right profile, or basically doing more consultative type of job, rather than these administrative type of job. So which is called, so I think most of the HRIS, they already have built in, but there are some auto schedulers which is available in the market also, which you can be used, and which can basically, I'm sure most of us are using mobile phones, and some of those who are using Apple, in Apple, as soon as you go to your calendar, you will see what, let's say if you are basically having a meeting with 5 people, it will show you what are the free times, what are the free slots you have if you just enter the name of those 5 people. So that is nothing, that is the AI which is working at the back end, and which basically looks at the free slots across the people. It is not reading the calendar data, but is just reading the slots. So and then which can help you to basically schedule. So I think these type of scheduling assistants are also available in the market. The reason being because these are the small things which consumes a lot of time for at least the talent acquisition team. So I think if we just automate these small things, then the talent acquisition team can do more consultative type of work, because currently we expect the HR to be the consultants to the business or to the leaders or to the managers. So if we expect them, then we need to just make sure that these transactional activities, how can we automate some of these transaction activities and give them the bandwidth to improve that? Because otherwise you increase the headcount. If you increase the headcount, that's a cost to the organization, which I'm sure all the organizations are very conscious about the cost nowadays. So I think we need to look at more smartly how can we increase the bandwidth of the existing resources. Again, another part where we have done a level of automation, and we are in the UAT, which is user access testing right now, is because some of you who are using SuccessFactors, I can quote the example from the SuccessFactors, because when you do the hiring and when you finalize the hiring, after that, it takes 1 or 2 days to basically generate the offer letter, because you need to basically select the right template, pull the data, and then generate the offer letter, send it to the candidate, and all those things. So now what we have done is, there's something called an offer approval form, which is there in SuccessFactors, and I'm sure the same thing is there in almost all the HRIS system. So which is definitely first thing which get closed as soon as you close on the candidate. So we simply pull that data into our platform, and we generate automatic offer letter with zero manual touch, which means it takes hardly 5 minutes. Next. The candidate, the recruiter need to click, which takes less than 5 minutes to generate the offer letter and to send the offer letter to the candidate through the DocuSign. And then they can accept through the DocuSign. As soon as they accept and sign, you get the message back into the same platform where you know whether he has accepted or he has basically rejected or whatever it is. So you can basically manage in that way, so that you don't have to invest the time in just calling them up, base the app, we have sent it to you, now you go back and check it, let me know, and then you're again calling up, you have not accepted, whatever it is. So I think this process can be automated and the bandwidth of the TA teams can be freed so that they can use it for more consultative work. So I think that is another level of automations which we have done. Interview is the another part which is very, very important, because I talked about the screening algorithm, which basically screens, which basically does the matching against the job requisition. But I think in India, especially in the APEC countries, the people write too much in their resumes, and sometimes it may be true, it may not be true. So I think there are a lot of video interview tools which is available. Video interview doesn't mean I'm talking about the video calls. The video interview are also about where you can have the question bank at the back end, which could be linked to the roles, and randomly the question will come, and the candidate will basically, and you don't have to be physically present on the other side of it. It will randomly come, and the candidate basically respond to those questions, and basically the data gets stored in the system. Besides the data, it also basically reads the facial expression, the response time, and all those of the candidate, because sometimes he may be opening up Google and then looking at, so it captures every activity of that time, the facial expression, what he or she has, the tabs he is basically opening up, and all those things. So all this data, and then basis that, there's an AI at the back end which basically analyzes the report and sends you the report, and which can help you to basically look at these parts. So the screening could be done, or the matching could be done by the AI, and then you can have the video interview, which can help you to basically further filter that, and then you have only 3 or 4 resumes which you can send it to your hiring manager. I'm sure they will be happy, because now they have only 3 or 4 resumes to look at through, and then they can quickly look at, select. The whole cycle time will reduce, and the business impact will also reduce, because the more delay we have in the hiring, I'm sure there is a more delay in the business of the business also, because they are losing on everyday basis. If it's a sales role or whatever it is, we are losing on the everyday basis. So that's why it will help us to improve or have the greater impact on the business. Coming to the onboarding piece, very, very important piece, especially in today's time, especially in this current situation when we are in a so we are all are aware of COVID 2019, which is basically currently going on. We all are locked up at our homes. So I think this digital HR is helping us to run our organization in a very, very smooth way. However, see, as me and my team need to be at the back end, make sure all the systems are running in the more smoother way. But that's a very small team who is working on that part. But the whole organization is basically able to work from the home. We are able to onboard our employees from home. They are joining only from home. We are able to basically push and I will talk about at the last what is the role of HR in the COVID 2019 if the time permits. So I think we are managing that in a more smarter way because of these digital transformations which we have done. In that, so the employees, they are joining, we are looking at they are submitting their documents, the documents are automatically going to the background verification team, and then they are automatically getting the digital induction links, so they are doing the digital induction sitting at home. So all these environments which we have created, and that is helping us right now in the current situation where we cannot move out of our houses, but I think the work is not getting impacted and employees are able to manage their work in a more smoother way. So now coming to the next part of the, I think there is some, is there a Kavit? Okay, So I just thought, is there any message? Okay, so I think Kavita rightly said, if you have any questions, please type down in the message window. I will be happy to take up those questions right now, or let's say during my presentation, that should be okay. Now coming to the talent management and C&B, which is compensation and benefit vertical of vertical. So if you look at, I use the word smart at some of the areas. Let's say smart IJP, smart referrals. So these smart IJP and smart referrals are nothing, because IJP is basically internal job posting. Whenever you have a job posting, I'm sure you post it internally also. So somebody who is interested internally can apply to those jobs and get selected and whatever it is. So again, in most of the organization, I think that is also one of the major source of hiring against the open positions also. So I think that, and that is also one of the way of managing the aspirations of the employee. So when I say smart process, the smart process is, as soon as you upload your resume, you see the matching against the job for which you want to apply, or you see against all the open jobs, and then it shows you, okay, here you are 60%, 70%, 80% match, and these are the gaps which you have. So if I'm just interested in some role, and that is my passion, and I want to just get into that role, whenever that role gets open, I see, let's say there's a 60% fitment, and I also get to see my development areas or the gap areas. So I can definitely use those gap areas, and I can go to my learning and development and start developing myself, if that is a passion or that is a role I want to move over the period of time. That is one way of looking at it. The another way is, because the employer doesn't apply randomly to all the jobs, and then he start building up the perception that, oh, the IJP, I applied to so many IJPs and I'm not getting selected, because the perceptions generally get built up, because the employees may or may not understand he just applied, but the selection but he was not fitting to those roles. So I think with these smart IJPs, they get to know there and then, rather than it's going to HR, or let's say going to the talent acquisition team, or going to the hiring managers, and then he or she giving them the feedback. And most of the time, the hiring manager may or may not have the time to give them the feedback. Okay, these are the areas you need to improve upon to get into this role. So I think the smart IJP helps them to do that. Same is the case with the referrals also. You use the same base, where as soon as you upload the referral resume, you see the fitment against the open positions, and you can submit it against the specific fit jobs only, rather than randomly just sharing it on the different open positions, so that your reference getting selected, the probability of reference getting selected also increases. So that is basically the smart referral. Very important part is I will touch base on some of the specific diversity and inclusion, and we talked about diversity and inclusion as one of the examples in the hiring also, because most of the organization have that focus area right now. So I think with the smart screening and the resume masking, we were able to basically improve the diversity hiring, especially in our organization. That is one way of looking at it. The another interventions which my colleague who is leading it basically led, was basically around how we can help the employees, especially the women employees who are going on long leaves or maternity leaves. It's not only for the women employees, even the men can also, whosoever is going on long leaves, can also use the same platform. But that helps them to basically access the multiple type of resources which is required when they are going on these long leaves. So this platform, and then when they're returning back or being in touch with the organization while they are on the leave, so this platform helps them to do that, because otherwise whenever you go on a long leave, you are not in touch with your organization. So most of the time you may have some anxiety level in your in you, which can definitely if you're on a leave, or if you're not feeling well, or whatever it is on a long leave, so you may get impacted because of this. So I think this helps to reduce the anxiety levels of the employee. So the next part is the digital footprint of collaboration. We have not implemented that, but we have basically done the pilot. And let me explain you, because see, collaboration is, again, it's not a fancy word, but it is a necessity of every organization right now. When I say the necessity, because every organization, there are multiple departments or functions or verticals, and most of these verticals need to work together to deliver the results, whether it's customer related, whether it's sales related, or whatever it is. They all need to work together. And most of the organization, this is also the fact, is struggling with the collaboration. So I think, what does the collaboration, digital footprint of collaboration means? Where and I think most of us who are using Microsoft 360, Microsoft 360 also has analytics layer, which is called Workplace Analytics. So under that, it basically looks at the different email exchanges which is happening. It doesn't read the email content. It doesn't read the subject contents, because that is again from the confidentiality point of view, GDPR. So it basically looks at the email exchanges and all those, and it develops a map. Okay, what is the email exchange happening? And you can basically integrate a lot of data with it. If you are using Skype, if you are using Teams, if you are using IP phones, so you can basically definitely integrate multiple data sets into it, and you can plot that data into a chart, and then it can show you how the relationship between the different functions are happening. For example, solution need to work very closely with the sales. So whether there is a huge email transactions happening or whatever it is. So that gives you, this digital footprint will give you at least not exactly 100%, but that will give you the high probability of the relationship between the two functions. And I think you can further dissect the data when you look at, okay, at this time, this RFP was getting submitted. So what was basically the level of collaboration between these teams? So you can further dissect the data into multiple ways, and which will help you. And I think Workplace Analytics has a lot of other areas where they use this type of data sets, and they give you a lot of insights around the human behaviors and a lot of data around this. So I think that is the digital footprint of collaboration I was talking about, because then you can use the same data to look at, okay, how basically if there is some problem, the HR can get this data and then can basically start working with these functions and can use their consultative approach and help them to improve the collaborations or whatever it is. The next part is again the manpower planning. Very, very important, because I think nowadays, given the situation we all are in, I'm not talking about only the COVID, but I think before that also, the way the whole economy was moving, the organizations were becoming more and more cost conscious. And I think especially the telecom industry was going through a rapid transformation. So I think to help the organization to have to basically manage the cost, the manpower planning is very, very important. And I think gone are the days when we used to do the manpower planning, especially on the Excel sheets and all those, because if you're a global organization, then you need to look at the 360-degree view of the manpower planning. For example, sometimes you may like, so you're a global organization, sometimes you may like to transition the role from international to the domestic also. So there are a lot of ways. Sometimes you need to downgrade the roles. So there are a lot of ways by which you manage the cost, because when we talk about the manpower planning, it's not about the number of the headcounts, it's also the costs associated with it. So it goes hand in hand. So I think the whole process of manpower planning in Tata Communication, it is basically automated, and we use the platform which is called Anaplan. We have developed that on the entire manpower planning on Anaplan, and every month the Outlook is getting prepared. Outlook is where you basically work for you develop the projections for the next month. So I think the Outlook gets developed, which helps the business to look at what is the current cost and what is the upcoming cost which is coming, and then they can manage basis the revenue, they can manage the cost very, very easily. Because otherwise, if we don't have this data, then basically we understand the revenue, but if we don't understand the cost, then I think that creates a lot of problem when we go back and look at the EBITDA for the organization, or other matrices. It could be profit or whatever it is for the organization. So that is the manpower planning part of it. Attrition management, because up till now, and this project is still under the UAT for me, and I will talk about this project more into the analytics part of it. Attrition management is something where, because up till now we just look at the attrition, trends of the attrition, and then we basically, based on the trends, then we say, okay, this is what the attrition in the organization going on. But is there a way we can identify proactively who is going to attrite and under what scenario he or she is going to attrite. It's easy with the big data. The reason being because when we look at the attrition data and attrition reports right now, we just look at which employee left, what is the gender, and all those things. But if you look at the entire life cycle data of that employee, then it will help us to build up what is the scenario or sequence or the activities which happened in the life cycle event. Let's say somebody stayed for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. So you have that data into your data mart, or let's say wherever you're storing this data. With the life cycle event, you will get to know which event and where it has got triggered, and then you can basically develop a model where it can basically, if somebody is and then the model will help you to predict that if the same scenarios or different type of scenarios are getting replicated to other employees, then you get the trigger, okay, these are the employees who are in a red zone or amber zone or the green zone. So I think, but again, understand, I'm talking about a lot of things about AI ML, but you need to understand the accuracy of these algorithms, because see, the accuracy of the algorithm is very, very important, because these algorithms are not 100% right. There is no algorithm in the world whose precision score is 100%. No algorithm. Even the Facebooks and the Googles of the world were not able to produce a 100% precision algorithm. So most of the time, it depends upon the data, the volume of the data you have, because the more data you have, the better the algorithm will give the output. But based on the organization challenges we all have, we have the limited type of data. So it takes a lot of time to train these algorithms and to push that into production, because generally on an average, my algorithm takes around a year time. Basically, when we develop the algorithm, then you need to basically run it through the multiple scenarios, a lot of time, and then it start predicting, because you don't have that ample size of data which Googles and the Facebooks of the world they have. So I think with the limited volume, so you need to give a lot of time in the UAT, which is the user access test, and do that. So similarly, going back to the attrition, so you need to basically train it, and then it start predicting. Currently, if the precision score of the algorithm which we have created is around 68%, which means in the 68% of the times, it will predict the right output. And there will be 32% where the output may be wrong. But I think more time when we give, it may go to 72, 73, or 76, but it will not improve there, because you cannot fine-tune keep on fine-tuning the algorithms in that way, because otherwise then you will be building in your own biases. So I think 72, 76, which is good enough to give you the indications, and then you can basically proactively go and start engaging with these things. And a lot of products are anyways available in the market also. If you don't want to develop it internally, you can use some of the available products in the market, which can help you to basically generate that. But again, the baseline is you should have that data with you, because you may get the algorithms from the market, you may purchase it, but if you don't have the data, you cannot train, because whatever algorithms or whatever platforms you get in the market are not trained on your data, so will not be able to predict your output. So your data is required to basically train this thing, and you cannot use somebody else's data on this part. So that is on the attrition management. I will also touch base on the coaching conversations and talent clustering. I think by looking at the time, I will quickly move there. But coaching conversations are nothing in Tata Communications. We have enabled, so we have removed the year-end appraisal thing. And now we have a continuous coaching conversations, which is digital, and where the employee can go. So now the power is in the hand of employees, where he can go and raise the coaching conversation form to the managers, and the managers can basically have the coaching conversation with the employee, record that into the system. So that is the coaching conversations, and it is, I can have it every week, I can have it every alternate day, I can have it every fortnight. So it is, there is no limitation to it. But the only limitation is yes, one should have at least 2 coaching conversations in a year. If that is not happening, then the HR need to push that. But I think that is a flexibility which we have given, because year end was, because in a 12-month the employees were getting feedback only once, and I think that was not right, because that was directly impacting the salary increase. And that's why our coaching, and that's why we call it as a coaching conversations, because as a part of the coaching conversations, we don't give any ratings there. It is only the discussion which happens, the development areas get identified and get pushed to the learning and development, where the interventions can be undertaken. The talent clustering is basically a part of our compensation process, because ultimately every organization has a limited budget for the compensation increase. So I think you need to definitely bucket the employees into different buckets. But the way we have differentiated this from the performance rating is because performance is only one of the 5 parameters based on which the clustering happens. We don't look at the performance, we look at the contribution, because there's a difference between the performance and the contribution. My performance could be very good, but if I have not contributed to my function, or let's say if I have not contributed to the organization, then definitely my contribution will be relatively low as compared to somebody else whose performance could be average, but whose contribution was higher. So I think, so there are 5 parameters which we have internally based on the business needs. It's collaboration, it's basically future skill readiness. So these are 5 parameters which we have. So based on that, the clustering happens. Based on the clustering, the increments, or the people, they get their bonuses and the increments also. So that is the talent clustering process, and these are basically the automated process. The reason why I touch base on these processes is basically the way we are managing this is basically we are managing the entire process through the bot, which is we have implemented the RPA. Basically the bot does the entire transactional work at the back end, creating the session, pulling out the report, starting or closing the sessions, and all those things is done by the bot, and none of my team member or like the CNB team member does that. So I think that is why I touch base on this clustering process. However, the process is also automated. Now getting on to the next vertical, which is very, very important, is learning and development. And I think one of the statement which I've written over here is it's time for us to differentiate between learning and a capability development. Because see, most of the time what we do is, I'm sure a lot of organizations, they already have the competency matrix defined and they have the skills defined and they work with that. But let me take you back to the current scenario where the agility is the most important thing. Every organization is undergoing a rapid change. So either you basically make your competency agile so that you are keep on aligning your competency model with that, or you use some other approach which is more flexible and agile and which basically fits that. So I think I leave it to you all. But the difference between the learning and the capability is learning is something which everybody wants to do. I also do a lot of learning into different areas which may not be related to my job, because that is my or let's say which may be related to my current skill sets or whatever it is. Capability development is something which is more focused, more organization driven, which is preparing the organization for the next level or for the future. So that is more on the capability development. Those who are from the telecom industries, they will understand that the whole telecom has undergone a transformation. Let me give you a small example, because earlier we used to hire the network engineers, but now we hire software engineers, because now the network management has become a software defined networks. And a lot of other things have changed. So I think your portfolio, your basically products are changing, and the type of workforce which you were using earlier, now you have to transition it to the new type of workforce, and with the new type of skills which is there. So I think the capability development is there. I think as I gave you the earlier example also, people, they need. Currently, you cannot confine them into the rooms. I'm talking about the young workforce, the millennials, which we are getting into the organization. You cannot confine them into the room for 3 hours, because their span of concentration has also reduced. So they want a bite-sized, small learning chunks, which they can read it, or they can watch it whenever they want to do it. on the go, while they are in the cab, while they are in the metro, while they are basically walking down. They can just do that because that is the way they want to learn, because they are learning on Twitter, where they don't get to basically spend 3 hours, but they just spend few minutes to look at what is the new things which is going on. They learn on LinkedIn, they learn on Facebooks. So I think that is, or the best, if you go back and do the analysis, most of the people, they learn on YouTube's. And I'm sure you and I also, whenever there's something new comes in, we quickly go and look at the video. Okay, this is how the things can be done, or this is how, what is this all about? So I think that is the channel which everybody is looking at. So I think bite-size, continuous, anytime, anywhere type of platform we need to create. In Tata Communication also, we use a different platform, and I think all our learning content is linked to this platform, where the employee can basically use it anywhere, anytime. It's a mobile enabled, and they can and it also makes sure that the bite-sized learning content is being pushed to the employees, so they can do that. I talked about virtual classrooms and virtual labs, because there's always an option to get everybody at one location and get them into the classrooms or the labs, or the another, which will definitely incur a lot of cost, because you're incurring hotel costs, you are incurring space costs, and then definitely it takes a lot of time. And I think we all have seen the distance learning. The earlier also, there was a Hughes which used to run the courses, where the employees were able to do the video learning through there was a live sessions which they can attend, and they can learn through it in that way. So the virtual classroom and virtual labs are becoming more and more prominent, because that gives the flexibility to the employees to learn at their own pace, at their own chosen time, rather than pushing them at the same time. So in this way, you are basically empowering the employees to take charge of their own learning and capability development and invest time, because you are just enabling the infrastructure, and then you are enabling the employees. Because somebody who is not learning, who is not developing themselves, it means definitely over the period of time, his or her role will become redundant, and I'm sure he or she will look into the different things. Smart recommendation is something, because again, when you go to the Google, and then when you search something, you get a lot of recommendations over there. So that's why I use the word smart recommendation, because based on your skill, there's a AI, artificial intelligence algorithm, which is at the back end. It looks at your skills, and the level of skills goes back into the ocean of the content which is there from the different, which could be there from the web, or which could be there from your subscribed MOOC platforms, and it will start recommending you, okay, these are the different courses which you can do against these skills, and based on the level of the skills. And I think it fine tunes over the period of time, because the more people they use it, and the more data it has, it will basically fine tune the recommendation. So that is a recommendation, because otherwise the employee has to get into each of these platforms, search for it, and then shortlist, and then do that. He's wasting his too much of time, which he could have used for the learning. So I think that is the second way of looking at it. The last statement I will use in this is focus on freemium content than the paid content. This is I just gave you the example of YouTube. If you and I need to learn anything about any of the new technologies or whatever it is, we simply go to Google, type that, and then we look at, there's some videos on the YouTube, there are some research papers, there are something, and we go and do that. In a personal learning or development part, we don't subscribe to any of the Coursera's or the Sharekhans of the world. We just simply go do the Google and find out, and then start reading it. So that is the way we basically learn, most of us. So I think the same approach, if we use that, because see, the reason why I wrote this is because the cost consciousness. So how can we use more and more of freemium? Freemium is free, but a premium content, which is free of cost. So I think there are a lot of content which is there. And if you get a chance, and if you're able to record how your employees are learning, I'm sure that will give you a lot of insights around what are the different portals they all go through during their office hours. And basically, just give me a second. Sorry, I got a call from Kavita. I need to wind up. So I think that was the learning part of it. I will just quickly go to the operations part of it, and I will just take 2 minutes in the operations part of it. Operations is, I talk about onboarding, offboarding, crossboarding. I will just take one important part in the operation, which is the last part, which is basically the contingent workforce compliance management. Because I'm sure some of you must be from the manufacturing background and all those, where you have the off-roll people, or let's say the contingent workforce which is coming in, which is not the full-time employees. And in terms of contingent, then I think you need to manage a lot of compliance document for them. Let's say their muster roll, their ESIC, their PF, you need to check, you need to validate, then you need to basically submit it to the labor departments and all those. So it takes a lot of time. In case of Tata Communication, we have automated this through the RPA, where the bot basically checks all these things, all these data, and basically provides the compliance certificate to the vendors, basis which they can raise their invoice and do that. So we have automated this part. Not 100%, but yes, 85% of the process is being automated, so that we don't have to invest too much of time into this. So I think I talked about the analytics earlier, but I think I will basically now stop here and ask some questions, and then if there is still some time available, then I can touch base on the role of HR in the COVID 2019. But I will just pause here and look at if there's any questions which is being asked by the participants.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for the informative presentation. We have some questions from the participants, which is why I thought that maybe you could brief about the COVID, HR in the times of COVID during the question answer, if there are any questions. But let me begin with this first question that we have. What are the top 2 challenges that you faced while implementing these digital initiatives, and how did you overcome challenges?
Okay, see, I face 2 types of challenges. One is definitely the mindset challenge, because see, in any organization there are always 2 types of workforce. One is which is very tech savvy and who is ready to accept whatever technology you are bringing in. There's another type of workforce which is more senior, and they basically avoid using these things. It could be because of multiple ways. They are not exposed to the technologies, or they don't want to learn, or it could be they want to basically, they get a lot of flexibility when they are doing anything on that. So I think managing these 2 types of workforce is basically a big challenge. And so I basically use the change management approach in managing these. So while we are implementing these technologies, we work very closely with the leaders. We take their consensus, we make them understand what are the benefits they are going to get out of that. It's not only automation of the processes, but we also help them to understand when the data gets generated, how they are going to get benefit from the data, and which will help them to make the right decision. So that is one part of it. The second part of the challenge which I faced was basically, it is always tempting and easy to get the different resources which is available in the market, but that also attracts a lot of cost. So I think the second challenge which I have with me right now also is how I manage how I lower down my cost of operations. When I say operations, which means how can I reduce my system cost. So I think it's always easy, because nowadays there is a lot of open source platforms which is available, so you can switch on to those, or you can start using those open source, which doesn't attract any license or any major cost. So these are the 2 challenges which I had.
Okay, now we have a question. How does digital HR help attract and retain talent? Would request if you can also help us with some insights on talent movement using technology.
Okay. Great. So I think, so when you talk about the attract, I told you, because see, when you talk about the attract, I'm not talking about the entire process of when he's applying. See, attraction and staying in the organization is the experience of the employee. So when somebody joins or applies for any organization, because and he applies for any open job, he start experiencing your organization right at that point. And then definitely, because he's sitting in a central pool where he start discussing with other, because if his experience is not great, then I'm sure he will definitely, even though if you extend him the offer, he may or may not join. Even though if he joins, then he will try and leave as soon as possible if you are paying him exceptionally very high salary. That's a different scenario. But see, the experience of the employee is most important thing when he is whether joining the organization or within the organization, and the different opportunities and the transparencies you are bringing into the employees. When I talk about the transparency with this these automations, the employee knows how the data is being how the, let's say if he's applying for and anything, let's say he's applying for any open job, then he's getting the feedback also, your fitment is 60% and these are the development areas you need to work on. Very transparent, so the employee will feel that transparency and help them to improve their engagement, and will know, okay, these are the gap areas, and then there is another system of learning and development which can help him to develop. So he has an integrated system which can help him to develop himself and make him apply for this job in a year or 2 years time. So I think this is the experience of the employee, and the integrated environment which you provide helps them to do that. Now coming to the talent movement part of it, talent movement is nothing. I think how you are enabling the movement of the talent in an organization, because in any organization there is a two type of factor which plays in. One is a push, another is a pull. Pull, I call it as IJP, which is where the employees, they go by their own and apply to the open jobs. That is more like a pull because they are pulling it. Push is, which is more of a business driven. So when you look at the push part of it, okay, let's say there is a project which is coming up, and in this project these are the type of skill sets which we need. So how should we basically, and then we can use the technology to basically match against those skill sets, and then identify the people and then move into those roles. That is the business transfers, or let's say the business movements we are talking about. The another type of talent movement is more about when we are trying to develop the talent internally for the senior roles. So I think there also we know, okay, Rahul is in HR, and let's say we want to make Rahul the head of HR. I'm just giving you a simple example. So I think he should be exposed to A, B, C, T type of roles. So what are the right roles for him to acquire those type of skill sets, or what are the right roles for him to basically acquire that type of experience? There again, you can use the technology where it can help you. Okay, looking at my resume, it can tell me, because it's very customized, because it will understand my resume, because I'm a consultant also, strategy and operations, I'm a HR guy also, and I'm a technology guy also, so which may not be very common with other HR people. So I think it will understand, and then it will basically tell me, okay, these are the 2 roles or 3 roles Rahul should go through, and if he wants to acquire the experience for this level. So you can definitely use the technology in that way also.
Thank you, Rahul. There's one a little long question. Have you come across any situation where these smart digital systems have not worked as expected, especially in the context of talent acquisition? What are those situations, and why did it not work?
Very good question, and I think great question. I must say that. See, as I told you during my this thing also, no algorithm can give you 100% output. See, the best, most of these algorithms are either at 76, 7. These are into the somewhere between 65 to 75, or let's say 76 percentage correct output they generally give, and which we call it as a precision level. So in the technology, so which is the F1 score. So I think that they give that. Yes, we often see that, because see, the dependent in these two things are resume and the job requisition. If you are able to write down a better job description, then only the better match will happen with the resume. Because sometimes our leaders may not, or the hiring managers may not be very good at writing down the job descriptions, or sometimes they may be using the standard job descriptions because they just need to submit the job requisition, and then when they are interviewing, then they say, okay, these are the things they start evaluating in the candidate, which they are not written anywhere in the resume. So I think the JD or the job descriptions or the JRs need to be smartly written. Same is the case with applicants also. Their resumes also need to be smartly written. But see, we cannot control the resume part of it, but definitely we can control the job requisition or JD writing part of it. There is a lot of JD assistants which is available in the market, which basically get trained on these data which is available in the social world. And when somebody is writing down, let's say somebody is writing down the JD for the head of HRIS, then it will start suggesting these things. And when somebody is writing down, he will be able to write down a better job description with this assistant rather than simply writing down that way. So I think there is a technology which can help you to improve this, but yes, you cannot always get the 100% output of it, but it can definitely give you somewhere around 75 to 76% accuracy.
Okay, thank you. Now we have another question which is related to the current challenging times. Given the current situation with COVID-19, many organizations are forced to get into work from home mode, which would impact businesses. Is there a way to digitize beyond Excel with low cost impact and create a data-driven culture?
Yeah, it's very easy. And let me put it. See, if you don't have any complex systems, that's okay. See, earlier also, I think when I started my career, I used to use MS Access, and now the MS Access is very common. I think you get it free with all the Windows. So one thing could be, and I think if your organization has a SQL, then it's always good to basically have stored the data in SQL. But if you don't have the SQL, and if your organization doesn't want to basically invest, and currently you cannot invest also, so store the data into SQL, into the MS Access, and from MS Access you can show the output either into PPTs, or you can link it to the PPTs, or you can link it to the Excel sheets. There are few dashboard softwares also which is available in the if you go to Google and find out. There are freewares also. Open source dashboards are also available, which some of them which have the linked database, so you can store your data there and start showing that. Always remember one thing: whenever you use the open source, there is always a risk associated with this. With it is because you should use the database which is more of your database rather than their database, because that database could be exposed to multiple other things, the GDPR issue you may get into. So I think I would always suggest to use your own, but use the freeware to reflect that data into the dashboards and all those things. But it is possible. You can use MS Access, Excel, and which can be easily populated on the Excel's macros. You can have, and then you can have this. The only thing which will need is, if you want to basically, because that means if you're just doing it on your computer, then you only have the access to it. So what you can do is, and it's very easy nowadays, and almost all the organization has a VM which is called virtual machine. So you can basically, on your virtual machine, you can install the Windows, and in Windows you get the MS Access. There basically you can create this type of thing so that everybody can log into wherever he or she is, can log into that and can access that Excel sheet or PPT which you have prepared. But the backend data which is in Access, MS Access, will not be accessible to anyone if you put the permissions there. So yes, there are multiple ways you can do it. There's open source also, and you can use some primitive technologies also to do that. But it should be on the network, which is virtual machines or something. And virtual machines are not very costly nowadays. It's very and I'm sure there will be some freewares also available for the virtual machines. I have not used any, but I'm sure there will be some. Hi Kavita, is there any other question we have?
Yes, yes, Rahul, there's one more question. How do we initiate digitalization in an organization that hasn't yet come to terms with transformation and changes? I mean, HR's role is very important over here in digital transformation.
Oh, again, very important. And I think this is not a new thing with your organization. I think especially in India, a lot of organization is basically struggling with this. See, it is more of a sponsorship. See, I think two things I will talk about over here. And I think at Tata Communication, we are lucky enough to have a CHRO like Adesh Goyal, who himself is a technology guy, and he pushes a lot of technology interventions in Tata Communication. But I'm sure everybody is different. But let me start with that. See, somewhere you need to basically develop a business case of any initiative. When I say business case, the business case need to be in the business case format, where you are basically whatever initiative you are trying to implement, whether it's a talent acquisition or whatever type of initiative you are trying to implement, or getting a HRIS system into the system. So you need to basically develop a business case, what impact you are going to create, what is the business benefits, not only the English ones. You need to basically quantify the benefits, and trust me, I'm also from HR. I know how to quantify the things, and it is easily quantifiable. Everything is easily quantifiable. So I think so that is there. And then you also need to basically look at from the 3 to 5 year cost of ownership point of view. Let's say if you're getting a system, then what is the 3 to 5 year cost of ownership would be, because initially when you're implementing, there would be certain cost which is involved as the implementation cost and license cost, and I think over the period of time, then how you're optimizing this, and then definitely what are the business benefits you are going to get out of it. It could be saving the manager's time, it could be basically improving or reducing the hiring time. So there are multiple metrics which you can basically use, and you can give numbers to it, and then you can show, okay, if I'm investing $100 right now, and then how I'm going to cover it in 2 years, or how I'm going to cover this $100 which you're investing right now. So I think the business case is most important, and I think you need to be listening with the top management and not with anybody. So that is one part of it. Another approach could be very, very easy is, while you are approaching these with the business case, you can create a small model of whatever you are trying to do. That the model could be where you engage with some of the vendors whose product you want to purchase, and they can do the small POC for you, which is proof of concept, for which they don't charge. And then along with this business case, if you show them the POC, because business case is something which they will definitely understand, but if they see something, how the things are happening, that will give them more confidence, and then you will be able to drive that level of engagement.
Fair enough. There's another question which is related and a little more specific. If an organization is a novice in adopting digital tools so far, where would you advise that we get started? Please answer from a HR landscape perspective.
Okay. See, the first thing which I will suggest is, for me, and I think not only for me, for anybody in the technology, the first thing is you try and get your data, which is basically distributed all across at one place. It could be in MS Access, it could be in some open source database you are using in your organization. First, get that data at one place, because see, when you are going to basically engage with the senior leaders, you need to start speaking the language of data rather than simple English, because they may understand the English, but they may not approve those English sentences. But when they start looking at the data, then they start getting impressed with the data, because these are the people who sees the data in their day in, day out in their business. Also, the sales people look at the sales data, the manufacturing people, they look at the manufacturing data, the production data, the supply data, and all those things. So they understand the data very well. So you have to start using the data to get it done. So I will suggest start with first getting your data at one place, and basically start producing the reports or the dashboards proactively for the business leaders, and then when they start seeing the importance of it in their day-to-day decision making, then they will come back to you, okay, do this, and then you can do small type of automations, and these small type of automations can be done using the macros and all those things, because then the leaders will understand the importance of the automation. And I'm sure with your business case, with these small automations, with the data, and if you're engaging with some vendors, you can develop a POC. All this together, you will be able to convince your management easily and get their attention or the focus there. Definitely you need to show them the numbers. You cannot simply tell them, okay, this is how it's going to benefit, just write down the English 4 sentences. This is not going to help them, and they are not going to approve it. Definitely the numbers will help.
Okay. Now, the last question that I'm taking up is very interesting. Any ideas to improve employees' interest during these times of work from home?
Very, very interesting thing. Okay, see, I will just speak up from the Tata Communication point of view, and I think there was an article, and I think I will forward to you, Kavita, and then you can forward to all the participants after the call. That
Sure.
is the role of HR, and the CHRO's role has become more and more critical, especially in this situation. The reason is this, because the people is the most important asset, and the CHROs are responsible for the people management. And in our organization, my CHRO is playing a very, very very, very critical role in basically driving the entire this work from home initiatives and all those things. So let me come to the specifics right now. See, in our organization, we have developed a lot of, so we have developed the employee engagement handbook, which will be delivered through our learning platform, which we call it as Tata Communication Learning Academy, which is available on mobile and web both. So we are enabling through it. So how the managers should be engaging with their team members who are working from home. That is one part of it. Second part is we are also organizing some mindfulness trainings, and I think my colleague Ekta is also there on the call. I'm sure she must have received some invite also, and so I think we are running mindfulness training, because that is where because in current situation when you're working from home, so I think a lot of stress and pressure is there. It's not of the work, but definitely of the situation. So the mindfulness training, the meditation will help. So that is how we are driving. So that is the second part of it. The third part is we are enabling multiple type of policies. One of the policies and one of the directions which I got from my CHRO is the only KRA which he's expecting me to deliver right now is the employees get paid on time, irrespective of the situation, because we are the global company. We operate out of China also, South Korea also, Spain, Germany, Italy also. So I think, but he says, we just need to make sure the employees get the salaries on time. So that's the only thing we have. So I think we have the frequent communication from the leadership team. We have the frequent communication from the managers, which is going to the employee. The managers are also interacting on the Skype, on the different collaboration platforms. And definitely we are. So it's a entire ecosystem which we have created to engage with the employees, even though they are at home. Because see, working from home is also not very common in India. So I think suddenly we are in a situation where we have started. So it's more of a learning for us also. I will not say we have 100% there, but we are learning as we go, and we are improving every day. So
I think it was very interesting, Rahul. I think we all needed to hear that, and it's very, very informative and helpful. Thank you so much. Over to you, Colonel.
Thank you, Rahul, for taking such a good webinar, and I'm sure the questions are running out in large numbers. I'll request Kavita to share these questions with Rahul, and then he can respond back later. These are the times wherein your role in HR takes the maximum priority, and I'm sure people will learn, and new things will also come up in making us, the Indians, more comfortable in this working from home environment for future as well. Thank you once again, Rahul. We look forward to all the participants for participating in our future webinars as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.